What if every physical dollar, euro, and peso on Earth vanished tomorrow morning? Within 72 hours, roughly 40% of the global population that still depends on cash for daily survival gets locked out of buying food. And the strangest part isn't the panic. It's what happens to the people who thought they had nothing to lose. I'm Nova, and this is Nova Explains What If, where I run the thought experiment nobody else finishes. Today's question: what actually happens hour by hour? Same if physical cash disappears from every wallet on the planet. Because the first domino falls in your pocket, and the last one falls on entire nations. Number 7. The informal economy freezes solid. Right now, the World Bank estimates roughly 1.6 billion people work informally. Street vendors, day laborers, tip-based workers, paid in cash specifically because it's untraceable and instant. The moment cash vanishes, you watch a food stall owner in Lagos or Manila stare at a card reader they've never owned, unable to receive a single sale. Within days, informal trade, nearly a third of GDP in some developing economies, simply stops functioning because digital rails require a bank account, an ID, and infrastructure that took decades to build in wealthy nations. Here's the ripple nobody predicts. Without cash tips and informal wages, remittances, the $650 billion migrant workers sent home each year lose their easiest funding source, cash deposits at corner shops. Families relying on that money in rural Guatemala or Nepal feel a foreign policy-level shock inside 1 week, and that's before the next domino even starts falling. Number 6. Emergency systems lose their backup. Cash has always been civilization's fail-safe, the thing that still works when the power grid doesn't. After a hurricane or earthquake, when cell towers and card networks go dark, cash is what you use to buy water, fuel, or a hotel room with zero connectivity. FEMA and Red Cross disaster guides explicitly recommend keeping cash on hand for exactly this reason. Remove it, and every blackout becomes a total transaction blackout too. During Puerto Rico's 2017 grid collapse after Hurricane Maria, cash was the only thing moving goods for weeks. Now imagine that same storm with no cash anywhere on the island. Here's the ripple. Insurers and governments start quietly redesigning disaster response around guaranteed power and connectivity, meaning disaster relief becomes a race against server uptime, not just supply trucks. And the domino that follows is that people start hoarding something else entirely to survive outages. Number 5. Every purchase you make becomes a permanent, searchable record. Cash's defining feature wasn't convenience, it was anonymity. Behavioral economists call this the privacy premium. Studies from the Federal Reserve show people spend roughly 20% more freely with cash because there's no data trail attached. The instant that option disappears, your grocery runs, your late-night purchases, your therapy copay all become permanent entries in a corporate or government database forever. Financial surveillance stops being a choice and becomes the default setting of existing. The ripple effect surprises even economists. Without private cash transactions, black markets don't vanish. They migrate into barter, gift cards, or crypto, while law-abiding citizens absorb 100% of the transparency cost. And once every transaction is trackable, a government or company gains a new kind of power nobody has fully used yet: the ability to switch off an individual's spending remotely, which sets up the next domino perfectly. Number 4. And here's a question worth sitting with. What happens the very first time people fear a bank might fail, but there's no cash left to physically withdraw? Historically, a bank run meant crowds lining up outside a branch, like Britain's Northern Rock in 2007. That took hours to build, giving regulators time to react. With cash gone, you don't need to leave your couch. You just tap a button, and so does everyone else simultaneously. Silicon Valley Bank's 2023 collapse already showed this. $42 billion left in a single day, purely through mobile transfers, the fastest bank run in history. Remove physical cash entirely, and that speed becomes the only speed. The ripple. Regulators lose their early warning system because a run finishes before news cameras even arrive, forcing central banks towards circuit breakers and transaction limits nobody voted for, quietly turning your bank account from a right into something a system can pause. Number 3. Negative interest rates finally become enforceable. Economists have wanted this tool for decades, charging people to hold money to force spending during a recession. But cash always broke it. If a bank charges you negative interest, you just withdraw your cash and stuff it under a mattress instead. A trick called the zero lower bound. And central banks like Japan's and Switzerland's have hit that wall directly. Without cash, there is no mattress option left. Every dollar in your digital account can be nudged, taxed, or shrunk automatically by policy. No vote required, no physical alternative. The ripple effect nobody sees coming. This actually gives central banks their most powerful recession-fighting tool in a century, potentially preventing the kind of prolonged deflation that crushed Japan through the 1990s. But it also means your savings are no longer just your savings. They become an economic lever someone else pulls, and that reshapes how an entire generation decides whether to save anything at all. Number 2, a single technical outage can now freeze an entire nation's economy at once. In 2023, a routine software update took down major US bank apps for hours. In 2018, a glitch froze Visa payments across the UK, leaving people unable to buy anything for a full evening. Those were survivable because cash was still there underneath. Delete that safety net, and you are standing at a register with a full cart and zero way to pay, alongside literally everyone else in the country at the same moment. This is what engineers call a single point of failure at civilizational scale. No cash backstop, no manual fallback, nothing. The ripple. Nations start treating payment infrastructure like a strategic utility, on par with the electrical grid or water supply. Because a well-timed cyber attack on payment rails no longer just steals money. It could halt an entire country's ability to eat, drive, or work for as long as the servers stay dark. And number 1, the one nobody sees coming. Trust itself becomes the only currency left, and no engineer can rebuild it once it's gone. Cash never needed you to trust a company, an app, or a government's servers. It just needed to exist in your hand. Behavioral economist Hyman Minsky argued financial systems are stable only until people believe they aren't. And cash was always society's proof against total belief collapse. Remove it, and your entire economic life depends on continuous, unbroken faith that some institution's software keeps working, forever, everywhere, without exception. Here's what's speculative. Some economists think this could make economies more efficient and crisis-resistant. Others warn it makes them fragile in a new way. One bad month of headlines about frozen accounts could trigger a crisis of confidence no cash reserve could ever calm again. That's the final domino. We didn't just replace a physical object. We replaced the one thing money never used to require: permission. So the domino chain runs from a frozen food stall all the way to the death of financial anonymity itself. Each stage looking small until you notice it was holding the next one up. The real lesson isn't that cash is good or bad. It's that we built an entire civilization on a backup system we're quietly deleting without ever voting on it. So, tell me in the comments, if cash vanished tomorrow, which domino do you think falls first for you personally? If this rewired how you see the $20 bill in your pocket, subscribe to Nova Explains What If. Because next time, we run a thought experiment even stranger than this one.